Dear learners, welcome back to Java Program Interview Preparation Series. And today, we are going to discuss the program, like how we can remove the specific value from the array and we need to store the new value in a separate array. For example, like let me have one array, okay, and in which I am just going to store a multiple values. So let's say let it be like kind of an 4 comma 7 comma 9 comma 1 comma 2 comma 9. Okay, so now this is the array which I have created. Now in this array I need to remove the specific value. So let's say I need to remove the 9 and pose that, right, I need to store the new value in a separate array. So how we can do this? It is pretty simple. Like here, right, we know already know like inside an array, so every time the values will be stored in an index order. So the index specific, we can retrieve the value and we can check the condition like whether it is matching with 9. So if so, like we can count the number of 9 and pose that, right, we can create a separate array, and in the separate array we can inject the new values. But the thing is like, so whenever like we are planning to create an array, right, so we should have one point in a mind. So like the size of array is fixed. Okay, the size of array is always fixed. So now let's take this example. Now if we calculate this size, right, so what will be the size? Size is nothing but the number of values which is present inside the array. Here in this array, like we will be having the size as the sits, because like we are having like a sits value. If I remove the 9, right, so then like the size will be changed to, like obviously like 6 minus 2, it will be 4. Now the main thing is like, as I told, the size is fixed, so we need to define the size of the array. So generally like this line, right, how we can write in a traditional way. So here I need to store its value. So if I need to store as its value, I need to define the size, and in order to define the size, like I used to create in such a way, like integer array a is equal to new of int, and in which like I will define the size. Okay, so this is how traditionally we used to create. And if we need to add a values, so generally with the help of the index we are going to add. So whenever I say like a of 1 is equal to 4, so the index always starts from the 0, right? I can say a of 0 is equal to 4, which means like in 0th index the value 4 will be get stored. And whenever I say a of 1 is equal to 7, in the first index, right, the 7 will be get stored. So likewise, index specific we can store a value inside an array, which means like till the size is met we can store a value. But if I say let's say if I'm trying to add a value beyond its size, means it won't allow us to store the new value. Okay, so we should always have in mind the size of the array is fixed. So now we need to store this new values in a new array, right, which means like we need to define the size. And in order to define the size, right, I'm just going to calculate the number of 9 which is present inside the array called as an a. Now how we can calculate the number of 9? So in order to do so, like we need to iterate each by each value. Okay, so we need to iterate each value, right? So now in order to iterate, so obviously we know like we always use the traditional for loop. So which means like we will be initializing something, so int I is equal to 0, and pose that like we will be setting the condition, so I less than a dot length, and then we will be always setting the increment operator. So we can say like kind of an I plus plus, and we used to retrieve based upon the index. So this is how traditionally we used to create a loops. So either you can do the program with the traditional loops, or else like we can use the advanced loop. So for example, let me do with the advanced loop. So what is the syntax of advanced loop? So we technically call them as an for each loop, or advanced for loop, etc. So now the syntax is like we always like use the keyword called as an for, and followed by we need to inject the input which we need to read. And whenever we read the input, obviously, right, we are going to get some output and we need to define the output type. Okay, so what is the output type we are going to get? And if we try to print that output, like it will display the output over here. Now, how logically it works? So here we haven't set any conditions, but how it is going to work? So basically, it will work on the hash next principle. So whenever we try to read something, right? For example, in this case, I need to read the array called as an A. So I can just say A. And I need to store the output. So whenever we read this array, so we are going to read index by index. And what is the output type it is going to return? It is going to give the output type as an integer, right? So I can say int B. Okay. And then I'm just creating the block for it. And in which, like if I say sys out of B, during each and every run, it is going to print 4, 7, 9, 1, because we are retrieving one by one value, and when it read the last value 9, the loop will stop because next to 9 we don't have any values. So whenever we don't have any values next to it, like the loop will terminate. So in a for each loop, so we don't need to set any of the condition. So basically, like it work on the principle called as an hash next. Now let me try to use the same logic over here. Okay, so I'm using the for keyword. So what I need to read, I need to read the A. Okay, A array, I'm just injecting the input. So what will be the output I'm getting? So obviously it is stored only the numerical values. The output type will be integer. So let's say int, and let me just give some variable name as an output. Now if I add the open and close parentheses for the for loop, and if I say sys out of output, and if I try to run the program, right, it is going to like retrieve each value. It will be like kind of an 4 comma 7 comma 9 comma 1. So it has read all the values, but we need to do the conditional check. Why we are going to do the conditional check? Because I need to calculate the number of 9 which is present inside the array. So in order to do so, right, I'm just adding one condition. Okay, if, okay, so all the output is stored inside the variable called as an output, right? I can say if output equal to 9. Okay, so the equal to is an operator, like it will check for the match. Okay, so if it is equal to 9, if the output is equal to 9, then we need to count the 9. So in order to count the 9, right, I'm creating like one dummy outside the for loop. So let's say int count is equal to 0. Okay, or else for a better understanding, I can say int count 9 is equal to 0. So initially, so we are making the count as 0. But whenever it is step into the loop, right, I'm going to use the increment operator, and it is going to increase the output, the count by plus 1. So I can say like count 9 plus plus. Okay, so what it indicates, so if it step into the loop, it is going to increase the value of count 9 by plus 1. So if one match is found, then the count will be changed to 1. If two matches found, the count will be changed to 2. Okay, so likewise we can calculate the count. So now we have calculated the count. Now what we can do, so we need to store in a new array, right? So traditionally, let's say I'm just creating a new array. So int n is equal to, okay, new of int. So why I am creating in such a way? Because I need to define the size. And how we are going to calculate the size? So initially we know how to calculate the length of the array. So I need to calculate the length of the array. I can say like a dot length. It is going to give the length of the array. And post that, right, we know the number of 9%. So we can subtract the value, right? I can say minus of count 9. Okay, so now the new size will be configured over here, which is nothing but the size will be like kind of an 4, right? Okay, so now we can store 4 values inside an array. Okay, so why we are defining the size? Because in an array the size is fixed. If it is 4, we can store only 4 values. Now I need to store like 4 values inside an array. So what I can do, again I need to like iterate this particular array. So either we can use the traditional for loop, or we can use the for each loop. Okay, I'm just using the for each loop. Okay, and here I need to read the array, right? I'm just defining the input, and I need to specify the output. So output is nothing but the output type. So I can say int, and you can give any variable name. So let's say int k, and whenever we try to print the k, right, it is going to retrieve one by one value. As I told, it is going to work on the hash nest principle. If value is present next to it, then it will be true and it will be step into the loop. The condition will be true and it will be step into the loop. So after 4 7 is present, so it will step into the loop. After 7 9 is present, it will step into the loop. After 9 1 is present, it will step into the loop. So likewise it will always step into the loop. Okay, so now what we are going to do, so we need to like add the values inside the n array, which means except 9 we need to add rest of the values. So for which I'm just doing one more conditional check. So this time I'm just verifying k not is equal to 9. Okay, so why I'm just setting this condition? So whenever it is not equal to 9, it will step into it and we can add the new value because the value will be stored in the k, and I can inject the k in an array. And how we can inject? So as I told, right? So basically like we need to give the array name, followed by we need to specify the index, and then we need to assign the value. So obviously like we are retrieving the value in the variable called as an k. So which means I can say n of is equal to k. Okay, here we need to specify the index, right? So the index will be 0 1 2 3. So in order to specify the index, let's say let me create one more dummy outside the loop. So let it be like index is equal to 0. Okay, so initially like we are setting it as an 0, and as a first run, like the index value will be 0 and the 0 will be injected over here. So if I say index, right, so the value will be like kind of a 0 and n of 0 is equal to 4. The 4 will be get stored, but during next run this index value will be keep on, it should keep on increasing. So if you are using the traditional for loop, like obviously the increment operator is going to do the same. So but here we haven't used a traditional for loop, right? Then which means we need to add the increment operator over here. Okay, so that like during each and every run, so the index value will be keep on increasing, the new value will be stored in the respective index. Now let me just try to add a sysout statement and let me just try to print the array. Okay, but whenever we try to print the array, right, so for example if I try to run this program, like the output will be like kind of special characters. So basically we, if we need to print the entire array, so we need to convert this array into one string. So in order to do so, I'm just using the class called as an arrays, and in which like I will be having the method called as an toString. Okay, and in which like we need to pass the respective array, and post adding this line, and if I run this program, right, so now it should give the new array. So now if you notice, it is giving the new array. And if you want to understand much better, like as I told, right, so we can just always add the breakpoint over here, and then like you can add the breakpoint inside the loop, and then with the help of the debug, right, so we can easily understand so how logically it work. Okay, so the first loop here, the obviously the count is calculated and the count is 2. If you notice, the count is 2 because like two nines are present. Now here like the value of a dot length, so obviously the a dot length is nothing but like the number of values which is present inside the array, and the count is 2. And if you want to know the output of this particular one, as I told already, you can copy this and you can right click on the console and you can click on add watch, and you can place the particular line, and if you click on the enter, right, it is going to give the output. So the output will be 4. So obviously the length will be set to 4. Okay, which means we can store a 4 values. So now we are iterating one by one. Okay, so during the first run it will pick 4. Okay, so now the value of k will be 4. It will check whether 4 not is equal to 9 is obviously true. So now in the new index it will be get stored. So initially like the index is 0. Okay, in the 0th index like the value called as an 4 will be get stored. Okay, but if you notice like in the 0th index the 4 is get stored, But if I run, right, the increment operator may have increased the value of int x by plus 1, right? Now the value will be 1. So now if I resume the program, it will retrieve the other value, and again the condition is true. Now the int x value is 1, and in the first int x it will store as 7. So this is fine. And now it will check for the condition. So it is equal to 9. So it won't step into the conditional block, and again like it will pick the other value. So how it is picking the value? So using the for each loop, right? So like it will pick the value next to it. So if it doesn't have any value next to it, then the loop will be getting terminated. So now in the similar way, like if you notice, during each and every run it will retrieve the value, and the value will be get stored, and at one particular point, so the for loop will fail. So now the for loop will terminate. So not a fail, it will terminate, because we don't have any values after 9. So then it will terminate, and it will print the output. Okay, so this is how like we can remove the specific value from the array. So pretty much it is the same logic. So whatever the logic we have followed for the reversing the entire word, or the reversing a string, or the sum of array, so pretty much we are using the same logic, but only difference is like here I have used the for each loop, and the same program can be done with the traditional loop as well. So for example, if you want an understanding, so what I can do, I can say like here int I is equal to 0, and I can set a condition. So I less than a dot length, and then I can set an increment operator I plus plus. So now the loop is created. Now we need to check, we need to retrieve the value, right? I can say a of I. Okay, so even like if I set like this, even the program is going to give, it's going to work. Okay, but if you want to simplify, so you can use the for each loop, or else like if you are comfortable with the traditional loop, you can use the traditional loop. So if you are using the traditional loop, so here we are passing the int-x value based upon the initialized value. Okay, even I can refactor the same piece of code, and I can run with the help of the traditional loop. Okay, so just practice this program, and if you have any other doubts, right, you can just you make use of the comment section, and you can highlight your issues in the comment sections. And thanks for watching, and in the next video like we'll come up with the different program.